Right. Okay, so leading with hope. Hope is such a key ingredient in people's life. I mean, it's like, we're painfully hope-based creatures. We need hope in order to survive, but also in order to thrive. And it's a bit like, hope is a bit like oxygen or water or food or sunshine. It's something that people, human beings, need to live for. And I don't know if many of you have read the classic text by Viktor Frankl on Man's Search for Meaning, about the experience of the Jews in the prisoners of war camp. And it was interesting, the ones who survived weren't the strongest, they weren't the most determined, they weren't the most balanced, but they were the ones who clung on to hope. Wow. And I think Martin Luther said that anything that has ever been done in the world is born of hope. So in a different way, they've done all sorts of studies, as you can imagine, in the US and also the UK on this thing called hope. And what's interesting is in those two places, they found that university students with hope was a better predictor of academic performance than their intelligence, their personality, or even their past academic performance. So there's something that makes a tangible difference with hope. And again, in the US, they did a meta study of 45 different research projects that looked at 11,000 employees. And they found that this variable called hope accounted for a 14% productivity difference. Again, much more than intelligence. So hope is this sort of funny thing, because it's sort of quite intangible, but it does make a really key difference. And Elaine and I were working with another Norwegian organization this week, and the chief executive said, as we were preparing, he said, for him, hope is the single most important thing we work as Mission Alliance and as leaders, because it's impossible to get people to work collectively to change the future if they don't have hope. So again, it begs the question, so what is this thing called hope that we talk about so easily? And maybe the first thing to say is what hope is not. And hope is not false optimism. It's not just being positive about something. It's not just saying, oh, it'll get better soon. It's not just even about saying, oh, there's a silver lining to this, or the glass is half full. And in some respects, there's almost become a violence of positivity, that people have to be positive. But I think hope isn't optimism or wishful thinking. It's something quite sort of distinct from that. And again, hope differs from that in two ways. One is that hope faces reality. And just from your stories this morning, it is that candle in the darkness, and it's recognizing the darkness and the challenges. And Jimmy saying, it's hard to find hope at the moment. So it's something that is rooted in our circumstances, not just pretending that they're not there. And it's involved almost, facing that reality without flinching. The Bible talks about, setting your faces like flint sometimes. And that's a really tough, it is tough. It's sort of making peace with the grief that is around, and not trying to pretend it's away, the weeping with those who weep. When I first started in development, I worked in a place called the Mosquitia in Honduras. And what's really interesting there is that their word for love and their word for pain was exactly the same thing. That, love and pain are very closely connected. But it's not just about facing reality. It's also, hope is something goal orientated. It's got a specific direction, and it's leading us towards that direction. It enables us to work towards those goals, even amidst significant adversity. And hope is a motivation to persevere, even when we're skeptical or even unsure whether a hopeful outcome or the hoped for outcome is likely. It's what sort of keeps us in the game. So how do we sort of lead with hope? And I was struck by, I was reading some work by a psychologist called Gilbert, and he talks about that people's behavior are governed by three prime behavior systems, and that's this sense of threat, a soothing, and a driving. And so we're going to look at those three. And again, at the moment, if we look around us, the last 18 months, even life wasn't easy necessarily beforehand, but the last 18 months, the amygdala part of our brain is just turned on all the time. This sense of threat, we're threatened on a personal level, where we're worried about infection, or all of us will know people who have been affected or have died. There's a prevailing sense of grief. No one I know hasn't got someone who's really struggling at this time. That's on a personal level. On an organizational level, Helen was talking about how there's a gap in leadership at the moment in their church. In the church that I go to in Bath, I think we're meant to have 6 full-time staff, and we haven't got any at the moment. It's just taken its toll on us as organizations. We've had to change to working from home. For those of us who are used to international travel, that's not been possible. Every day there's a new system come in. I see in the UK last night, they put South Africa on a red list, and my daughter and son-in-law are meant to fly back via South Africa next week. So that call I got a moment ago is all to do with trying to get them back tomorrow, etc., etc. So, you can just never relax. That sense of threat in us, but also in all the people around us, is just on all the time. And as leaders, we have to recognize that, and we have to try and dial that down where at all possible. And amidst so much uncertainty, as leaders, it's about seeing how we can, is there anything we can do to reduce that sense of threat? And it is about creating what little certainty we can. And even if it's as sort of small as saying, I'll get back to you by 11 o'clock, and then do get back to them by 11 o'clock, even if you haven't got an answer, but just make sure that, because everyone's going to be feeling this sense of threat. So we just have to do everything we can to make sure that even we do the little things that we promised. And as well as reducing that sense of threat where we can, I think, this idea of soothing, because when we soothe, it releases endorphins in our body, and these endorphins release a sense of stress and pain. And so as leaders at the moment, we really have to go the extra mile in understanding people's situations, their anxieties, their worries, their mental health concerns. It is sort of, as leaders, we're called at the moment to empathize in a way that probably we've never had to in quite the same way before. Extra understanding of their parental responsibilities at home, or whatever else is going on. Even secular management writers. As Jimmy knows, I do stuff at City Business School, and the secular management writers are talking about a pastoral approach to leadership at the moment. And so again, at this time, a lot is about listening. I love that quote that says, what is it, that if you being listened to and being loved is so close that most people can't tell the difference. So if we really listen to people, they feel loved. So that thing of soothing at the moment is really, really key. And then the third element is that actually it's not just about soothing, but it's also about drive. People's behavior depends on their drive. And when we have drive, then that releases this chemical, this neurotransmitter called dopamine, and it gives people that kick and that excitement, and it's released when we reach a goal. So as leaders, it is about reconnecting people back to their purpose while they're here, the meaning of their role, the value that they bring. And so it's not just about soothing, but it's also about connecting with people's sense of drive. And again, particularly during, if people have been in a lockdown or they've been more isolated, then there will be a sort of an underlying sense of worthlessness. What am I really contributing? So as leaders, it's about trying to really look at how we connect with people's drive. So I feel that, leading with hope is about, minimizing the sense of threat, empathizing, soothing where possible, but also connecting people to their meaning. So it's worth reflecting on what, in our leadership or even in our work, whatever it might be, what story are we telling? What are we communicating? And it's about communicating, from fear to hope, from problem to solution, from being against something to being for something, from threat to opportunity, from victim to hero. And again, it is a big ask, particularly when we're under pressure. So it takes us back to where we get our sense of hope. And because if we hope in the people around us, even in our families, in our spouses, in our organization, in our church, unfortunately, they're all going to let us down. And if that's where we find our hope in our church leader or something like that, we're going to be disappointed. And again, we all know that in the midst of the storms, we're called to fix our eyes on Jesus, not on the COVID rates, not even on the ongoing injustices in the world, nor even put our hope in the Church of Sweden's ability to calm or even survive the storms. I'm just picking on the Church of Sweden, Helen, but we can't put our hope in that. It is in the midst of this, fixing that eyes on Jesus, as Hebrews 12 says. And it's interesting, it says, let us fix our eyes on Jesus. And then the end bit of the verse is, so that you will not grow weary or lose heart. And again, I think it's that real danger at the moment of losing heart. And 1 Corinthians 13, I love the sort of Message translation that talks about, trust steadily in God, hope unswervingly, love extravagantly. So hope unswervingly is a really powerful thing. And again, we know from the Bible that it's the circumstances aren't guaranteed to be great. John 16 says, in this world I'll have trouble. But then again finishes the sentence, but take heart, for I have overcome the world. So it's not about looking to the storms around somehow, but it is about fixing our eyes on Jesus, and it is about, to inspire others with hope. We have to connect with our very individual sense of hope ourselves. So Henrik is at this silent retreat at the moment, and again doing great things to connect to his sense of hope. But the phrase from the aeroplanes where we're told that you have to put your oxygen mask on first in order to help other people. So again, as leaders, as individuals, again, leaders, it could be in our families, whatever it might be, leaders in the broadest sense of the world, we have to reconnect, and we have to connect deeply with our own personal sense of hope, put our own oxygen mask on first, if we're to help other people. So I'll press pause there. I'll press stop actually.